Hey, good morning. I want to wish you a great morning and a great week, and just encourage you to do your best on this quiz. I know you're only watching this if you are in need of some help, so let's just get right to it. First thing that we need to talk about is that if you're going to write an equation for a translation with the given asymptotes, then it's the same translation idea that you had before. Wherever you have the x in the original parent function, you're going to need to use the x in order to figure out how to translate it. So for example, here the asymptote has to be at x is 2, so this would be where you get a 0 in your denominator, so you're going to do x minus 2, and then the 8 just brings it up 8. So you have to have an original equation and then apply what you know in order to figure out what it looks like. So here, 9 over, and the 9 doesn't change, x plus 6, because these two would give you 0, and then the plus 5, which just brings the whole thing up 5 units. Again here, x minus 4 in the denominator, and then minus 1 to bring the whole thing down. And here, x plus 3 in the denominator, and minus 8 to bring the whole thing down. The hardest thing people find here is remembering to make this opposite, but I think you guys have been doing good with that. So let's just take and move on. Next, you need a description of how to find whether it's a direct inverse or neither variation, and if so, to find the constant of variation. So you will have answer blanks for these and be able to fill in answers on these things. Okay? All right, so here we have, in order to check for direct, you're checking the division problems, you're checking the quotients. 7 divided by 2, 3 divided by 8. What we find out, 7 divided by 2 is 3.5, but 8.8 divided by 3 is not, so it's not a direct variation. For an inverse, you're checking products. 2 times 7, 3 times 8, not equal to 14. Okay, it's kind of sloppy written here, but we know 2 times 7 is 14. 3 times 8 is not 14, so this one is neither direct nor inverse. Okay, once again, we'll check the division problems first to check for direct. 6 divided by 2, 3, 9 divided by 3, 3, 4, 12 divided by 4, 3, 15 divided by 5, 3. They all give you the same answer, that's 3. So this means that this one's a direct variation, and your constant of variation is 3, that number you got. So if the numbers match, that's your constant of variation, and that is something that you'll need to identify as well. On this one, okay, we can check the quotients. 12 divided by 2, 6. 8 divided by 3, not 6. So since it's not 6, it's not direct. Check the products. 2 times 12, 24. 3 times 8, 24. And 4 times 6, 24. 5 times 4.8, also 24. Since they're all 24, we have that the constant of variation is 24, and it is an inverse variation because it fits that inverse pattern. And then once again, we check, first of all, the quotients, and very quickly that falls apart, so it's not a direct variation. Inverse variation, we check the products, and in this case the products are all equal to the same number. Means our constant of variation, because it's constant, unchanging, is 48, and it's an inverse variation. All right, so hopefully that's pretty nice and cut and dried and simple for you. Then we move into, well, what if we have an inverse variation, and then we have to find the equation, find the function, And then we have to find out a value when you are given another value. Make sure that in this case you're finding both. So you need to find the constant of variation in order to do this. So our constant of variation is just what you get when you multiply the numbers together. Okay, our constant of variation is just what you get when you multiply the numbers together. Okay, then you need to take that constant of variation. It says write the function and then find y when x equals 9. So the function is y equals k over x, y equals 36 over x, y equals 90 over x. So I would be able to expect you to type that answer in as an answer. And then in order to find the last part, find y when x equals 9, you'd have to plug in that. And here you get y equals 4. For this one, find y when x equals 9. You'd have to plug in the 9 and you'll get 10 for that one. Okay, so don't forget there's 2 answers to this problem. Make sure that you would solve for both of them. All right, the next one that you saw there and you saw the answer, but just because you might need the explanation, this part gives you your x asymptote. So on your quiz, you're going to have to write in something like the x asymptote is x equals 1, and the y asymptote would be y equals 2. It would move it right 1 and up 2, and you would need to be able to recognize a graph if you saw it. Right 1, up 2. So what you need to do on your quiz is you need to write it, draw it, so that when you're doing your answer key, you can just very quickly plug in and choose the one that makes sense. So right 1, up 2. And we are looking for the right shape in that. Okay? This one, this will go left 4 and down 2. The one with the X tells you which way, left or right, and this one tells you the other way. So left 4, down 2. Left 4, this is x equals negative 4, and this is y equals negative 2. Just so that you have that and you're able to sketch the asymptotes and you're able to graph them. And then you would be asked for a problem like this to find a whole pile of information. So be prepared for that. That will be, the question on this will be worth a whole lot of points because there's an awful lot of questions being asked about it. So please make sure that you're very good at doing this. So first thing that you would need to do is dust off those factoring skills and factor numerator and denominator. For those that don't remember, what you're looking for is factors of negative 18, that when you add them together you get negative 7. So negative 9 and 2 give you that because they give you negative 18, and then when you would be adding the negative 9 and 2 you'd get negative 7. Same with the denominator. Factors of negative 6, when you add them together you get negative 5. So what we can do from that is we can figure out a whole bunch of different information. First of all, the domain. You look at your x values for that. Start off with thinking in your mind that x can be anything, and then look for the exceptions. X can be anything except it can't be 6 and it can't be negative 1, because those will give you zeros in the denominator. Okay, the points of discontinuity are the places where x would equal those values. So where x equals 6 or x equals negative 1. Make sure you make that distinction. So when you're typing it in, okay, when you're typing it in, you would have the right way of putting that. Okay, so make sure that you can identify whether it's not equal to or equal to. Okay. The domain is the one that takes away things, and the points of discontinuity are those places where it happens, so they mean two different things. All right, then we think about the vertical asymptotes. Okay, the vertical ones, the up and down ones. The vertical asymptotes are actually mirroring the points of discontinuity because they are where x equals 6, which is this way, and x equals -1 this way. You have to be able to put in the vertical asymptotes in this form. If you just put 6 or you just put -1, you'll get some points taken off because a vertical asymptote is actually a line where x equals 6, a line where x equals -1. So super important there. All right. Horizontal asymptotes. This is the one where you check the numerator and denominator's exponents. And as long as the exponents are equal, then you don't have to, then you take the coefficient here divided by the coefficient here, and then that gives you your answer. It happens that there are ones here, but if they were not ones, then you would need to make sure that you took the coefficient here divided by coefficient here in order to get your horizontal asymptote. So here our horizontal asymptote turns out to be 1. Okay, so that's super important that you be able to do that. All right, then we have our y-intercept and our x-intercept. Remember, our x-intercept is what happens when y equals 0. Okay, so when y equals 0, consider your numerator only. So when we consider our numerator, x equals 9 will give us a y equals 0. X equals -2 will give us a y equals 0. Because you're looking for values that'll give you 0 in the numerator for the x-intercept. For the y-intercept, you're simply plugging 0 in wherever you see an x. So when I do that and I plug zeros into these spots, I get 3. So my y-intercept is at 3. Okay, and then the graph, well, what does this tell me? It tells me that I have vertical asymptotes at 6 and -1. So you've got vertical lines this way. It tells you you've got a horizontal asymptote at y equals 1. And then the rest of the intercepts, okay, the intercepts come from those. But what about the rest of the shape of the graph? If you want the rest of the shape in the graph, you should plug in some numbers around it, or you can use your calculator's table function. Okay, let's just really quickly review that, because you can plug in numbers into these and figure it out, but just as a little quick shortcut, if you plug in your equations, x squared minus 7x minus 18, and I forgot my parentheses, so I need to go back and I need to put them in. If I don't put these parentheses in, it's going to make a mess. So I need to insert my parenthesis. There we go. Yeah, without the parentheses, it's not going to give you actually the graph that you want. So that's a good thing, actually a happy accident that I made that mistake, so you can see, because it is super important. 5x minus 6. And even though Zoom 6 will show me something, it's not going to be that useful. We can kind of see what it looks like. Okay. But what I'm really interested in is I'm interested in some of those other points, so we can go to the table. Okay, and you're looking for those error ones. You know there's going to be an error at 6. And you know that there's going to be an error at -1. But then these points in here are super useful for getting a shape. And then also the ones that are down this way are super useful. It shows you what's happening as you get further and further and further negative. You're getting to be bigger points, and then the other way as well. You can see what's happening on here with the ordered pairs. Okay, so you find out 7 and 8 and 9. Okay, there it's getting up to 0. There's our x-intercept over here, and just moving right along, you can see all those different points and get an idea of the shape. Okay, so that's it for right now. And I hope that you have a really wonderful, blessed day. God's blessings on you and your family.